Clara never meant to join a book club for grievers, let alone one run by a retired punk librarian with a penchant for mismatched socks. But when a dog-eared copy of Middlemarch tumbled from her bag outside a Camden bookshop, 60-year-old fingers scooped it up, thrusting her into a circle of women swapping paperbacks like battle scars. Vibes were less pity-party, more potluck of resilience. Each cracked spine-proof life kept turning pages. London drizzle couldn't dampen grit in their laughter. Here, loss wasn't she never meant to join a book club. Yet there she stood, clutching a battered copy of Middlemarch, its spine cracked like her own knees after 60 years of London pavements, outside a primrose yellow bookshop where a handwritten sign promised tea, tales, no tears unless prose demands it. Grief had settled into her bones like stubborn dust on a forgotten shelf, but this was different. Not hollow ache of loss, not phantom weight of her husband's absence, but something pricklier, fear that joy might feel like betrayal. She traced novel's dog-eared corner, a relic from university days, when life still smelled of ink and possibility. Back then, she'd underlined passages with fervor. Now, her hands hesitated, as if turning pages might unravel her. Inside, mismatched armchair vibes welcomed her. A woman in a chunky knit cardigan, Margaret, 73, 2 hip replacements, 0 patience for small talk, shoved a custard cream into Clara's palm. Eat? Dickens is heavier than he looks, creator snorted, crumbs tumbling down her blouse. Week after week, books became bridges. They swapped dog-eared paperbacks with sticky notes tucked inside. Try page 42, trust me, and creator discovered grief wasn't a monolith, but a mosaic, each fragment refracting light differently. One evening, she brought her husband's favorite Agatha Christie, its margins scribbled with his terrible puns. Group passed it around like a sacrament, their laughter warm as a library lamp. By spring, Clara hosted swap in her tiny flat, serving digestives on floral china. Sunlight caught dust motes above their heads, and for a moment, room shimmered, not with absence, but with quiet hum of stories doing what they do best. Stitching hearts woman never meant to join a book club. Yet there she stood, clutching a battered copy of Middlemarch outside a cozy London bookshop, its windows glowing like amber in autumn chill. 60 years old and still surprising herself. Who knew grief could lead to a Tuesday night ritual involving tea stains and heated debates about fictional characters? Shop's community book swap had lured her in weeks ago. A handwritten sign promising leave one, take one, no sad vibes, just stories. She'd left behind her late husband's thriller, spine cracked from his rereading, and taken a dog-eared novel with a sticky note, this won men's hearts. Curiosity outweighed caution. By chapter 3, she'd sobbed into a cushion, then laughed her own dramatics. Turns out, Mystery M was Marjorie, a spry 75-year-old with a penchant for neon scarves and plot twists. She ran book club like a benevolent general, nudging stragglers toward revelations with a wink. Under her guidance, woman discovered reading wasn't passive, it was rebellion. Each page turned was a quiet, not today to sorrow. First, creator fumbled. She mixed up character names, spilled Earl Grey on borrowed paperbacks, once even dozed off mid-meeting, jet lag, she insisted, though she hadn't left city in years. But group never judged. Instead, they passed her biscuits and highlighted their favorite passages, their kindness as steady as a bookmark holding her place. That old novel she'd taken from swap became a talisman. Its margins filled with notes from strangers, underlined truths, smiley faces, an occasional this part. Reminded her no story, or life, was meant to be lived alone. One evening, she caught herself scribbling her own comment beside a poignant line, yes. Exactly. By winter, Clara wasn't just attending, she was suggesting titles, hosting meetings in her flat, even convincing Bookshop to start a blind date with a book event. Grief hadn't vanished, but it had made space, for dog-eared paperbacks, Marjorie's terrible puns, and quiet thrill of realizing she'd become someone who could say, "I'm in a book club," without irony. Loss had folded itself into her story like a well-worn page corner, there, but no longer whole plot. She never meant to join a book club. Yet there she stood, clutching a dog-eared copy of Middlemarch outside a dimly lit Camden bookshop, wondering if 60 was too late to rewrite her story. Grief had turned her into a woman who talked to teakettles, but books demanded answers. Inside, mismatched armchairs cradled strangers swapping paperbacks like battle scars. A neon sign buzzed overhead, "Community shelf, take one, leave one," its glow catching on a tattered Persuasion wedged between thrillers. Austen had been her daughter's favorite. Clara's fingers hovered, then retreated. Sentimentality was a trap. She'd come for distraction, not ghosts. First meetings were agony. Creator fumbled over plot points, mistook symbolism for spoilers, and once, mortifyingly, snorted tea when someone called Wuthering Heights a love story. But week after week, she returned, stubborn as a plot twist. Groups' vibes were less literary salon, more survivor's circle. A retired nurse dissected year of magical thinking like a diagnosis, while a punk grandmother argued Gilead needed more swearing. One rainy Thursday, Creator brought Persuasion. Left it on swap shelf without ceremony. Letting go felt like exhaling after months underwater. Later, she spotted a young mother tucking it into her bag, humming a lullaby Clara hadn't heard in decades. Grief, she realized, wasn't a solo read. It was a dog-eared, coffee-stained anthology passed hand to hand, each margin note a whisper, "Me too." By December, Clara's shelves held more mysteries than tragedies. And when she caught herself recommending Jane Eyre to a widower bookstore's holiday bash, skip film, books got bite, it didn't sting. It sparked. London's streets glittered with fairy lights as she walked home, a battered Mrs. Dalloway tucked under her arm. 60 wasn't late. It was just another chapter. Woman never meant to join a book club, but grief had a way of rewriting plans. 60 years old, with silver curls framing a face that had forgotten how to smile, she'd wandered into a tiny London bookshop one damp afternoon, drawn by a handwritten sign, "Community Book Swap, Healing Pages for Heavy Hearts." Skeptical but desperate, she clutched her late husband's battered copy of Middlemarch, its spine cracked from decades of love. What began as a reluctant visit became a ritual. Every Thursday, women sat among strangers turned confidants, their shared stories woven between dog-eared pages. Weeks passed, and something shifted, laughter crept back, sly as a cat burglar. One evening, flipping through that old novel, she found a pressed forget-me-not tucked inside, a relic from her honeymoon. A wild idea took root. London's annual Literary Lights Festival was coming, and she decided to go big. She rallied her book club, a ragtag crew of widows, divorcees, and one perpetually skeptical librarian named Marjorie, who'd initially scoffed emotional bibliotherapy. Together, they created Living Footnotes, an exhibit where every displayed book bore personal mementos, ticket stubs, grocery lists, lipstick kisses, proof that stories outlasted their readers. Clara's Middlemarch, center stage, held not just flower, but a faded photo of her husband midlaugh, his joy spilling off edges. Opening night buzzed with nervous energy. Marjorie hovered near back, arms crossed, until a teenager pointed Clara's display and whispered, "That's my grandma's handwriting in Pride and Prejudice." Room stilled. Then, phones lifted. Flashbulbs popped. A local journalist snapped woman mid-gesture, her hands framing exhibit like a magician revealing a trick. By morning, image had gone viral. 60-year-old bibliophile proves grief has a sequel. Marjorie, of all people, brought champagne. "All right," she muttered, clinking Clara's glass, "maybe old books do have new vibes." Crowd roared approval as Clara grinned, thinking of her husband's favorite line, "It's never too late to be what you might have been." Life, she decided, was worth capturing, one dog-eared page a time. She never meant to join a book club, but grief had a funny way of rewriting plans. 60 years young, she'd spent months cocooned in silence after losing her husband, until a dog-eared copy of Middlemarch, left on a park bench like some literary breadcrumb, led her straight into arms of a ragtag group of readers. They called themselves Unfolding Pages, and their meetings in a backroom of a Bloomsbury bookshop smelled of Earl Grey and second chances. What began as a distraction became a lifeline. Clara, once a librarian with a knack for matching people to stories, discovered her superpower hadn't faded. She could spot exact novel to mend a fractured heart. When Marjorie, a retired florist, confessed she hadn't slept since her son's passing, she pressed House in Cerulean Sea into her hands. Whimsy as therapy, she'd whispered. By spring, Marjorie was hosting wildflower-themed readings, tossing seed packets into every borrowed book. Then came Community Book Swap, Clara's brainchild. A battered suitcase on bookshop's stoop, filled with pre-loved stories and handwritten notes tucked inside. This one got me through divorce. Hope it lifts you too. Strangers began adding their own, turning grief into a shared language. Even shop's tabby cat, Dickens, approved, napping atop growing pile like a furry guardian of hope. One evening, Clara caught her reflection in shop window, silver hair piled high, grinning as she guided a new member toward a man called Ove. Not a lonely widow, but a conductor of quiet revolutions. That tattered Middlemarch now sat on swap shelf, its spine cracked with love, its margins scribbled with Clara's own journey. Grief hadn't vanished. But between dog-eared pages and mismatched teacups, she'd built something sturdier than sorrow, a tribe of story weavers stitching light back into world. Grab a book, pass it on. Your story's next chapter starts now.